The laughter abruptly ceased when Elizabeth majestically descended the grand ballroom staircase, her navy blue dress shimmering under the lights like a starry night sky. Blake Watson felt his blood freeze in his veins as his wife, whom he had left at home with the excuse of an indisposition, appeared before all his colleagues and superiors, including CEO Thomas Reynolds. Instinctively, Blake released the arm of his secretary, Vanessa, whose red dress contrasted sharply with Elizabeth's understated elegance. "What the hell is she doing here?" he whispered to himself, feeling his carefully crafted plan crumble before his eyes. What no one in the luxurious hotel knew was that just an hour ago, Blake had said the words to his secretary that would now condemn him. "Vanessa, you're the kind of woman a man is proud to introduce. My wife simply doesn't have the refinement necessary for these corporate events." Blake had planned everything meticulously. The provincial wife, a literature teacher at a public school, would never fit into the sophisticated corporate world where he aspired to rise. Elizabeth was intelligent, yes, but uncomfortable at social events, uninterested in office politics, and in Blake's view, without the polish necessary to help him climb the corporate ladder at Reynolds Enterprises. On the other hand, Vanessa Mitchell, his executive secretary for 2 years, seemed born for that world. Beautiful, articulate, with an MBA from Stanford and family connections in the business world. For Blake, she represented not just a competent professional partner, but an opportunity to present the perfect image to company executives. The annual Reynolds Enterprises Charity Ball was the most important corporate event of the year. It was there that alliances were forged, lasting impressions were created, and where Thomas Reynolds often announced important promotions. Blake was competing for the position of Vice President of Operations with only one other candidate, James Harrison, and knew that every detail counted. The idea of bringing Elizabeth, with her visible discomfort at formal events, and her tendency to ask naive questions about the business, seemed a risk he wasn't willing to take. The night before the ball, Blake had carefully crafted his story. "Honey, I'm not feeling well," Elizabeth lied as he adjusted his bow tie in the mirror. "I don't think I'll be able to go tomorrow." Blake feigned disappointment, insisting she rest. "Your health is more important. I'll just go to represent us and come back early." Elizabeth kissed him on the cheek, thanking him for his understanding, never suspecting her husband had already invited his secretary, with whom he'd been having a discreet affair for 6 months, to accompany him. Blake and Vanessa had rehearsed the story. She was a family friend who was in town, and he had kindly invited her so as not to waste Elizabeth's ticket. Nothing that would raise undue suspicion, just a gesture of professional courtesy. But the plan had another purpose. Blake wanted his superiors to associate his image with Vanessa's, not Elizabeth's. It was calculating, cold, but he justified it to himself as a necessity for his professional advancement. What Blake didn't know was that afternoon, Thomas Reynolds had personally called his residence to confirm the attendance of all executives and their spouses. Elizabeth, recovered from her momentary indisposition, had answered the call. When the CEO mentioned how eager he was to finally meet her at that night's event, Elizabeth's initial confusion quickly transformed into painful understanding. "Of course, Mr. Reynolds," she responded with a calmness that didn't reflect the internal storm forming. "I can't wait to meet you in person, too." After hanging up the phone, Elizabeth remained motionless for several minutes, pieces of an unpleasant puzzle fitting together in her mind. The unexplained overtime hours, suspicious messages, subtle changes in Blake's behavior, his insistence that she not attend company events, everything now made terrible sense. Her first impulse was to confront him, scream, cry, demand explanations. But Elizabeth Martin Watson hadn't earned respect as an educator for 2 decades by reacting impulsively to provocations. Instead, she did something that surprised even herself. She opened the closet, took out the navy blue dress she had bought months ago for a special occasion and never worn, and began to prepare. The dress was a significant investment Elizabeth had made after receiving an award for excellence in education. Blake had frowned at the price, commenting that it was a waste for someone who rarely attended formal events. She had kept it, waiting for a special occasion that never seemed to come. Now, as she slipped it over her body, Elizabeth felt a strange sense of calm enveloping her. She called her friend Caroline, an art teacher and part-time stylist. "I need your help." Immediately. 3 hours later, Elizabeth entered the Grand Plaza Hotel lobby, unrecognizable even to herself. Caroline had worked. Magic. Her hair, normally tied in a practical bun, now fell in soft waves framing her face. The subtle makeup enhancing her green eyes and cheekbones that Blake used to compliment when they met in college. The dress she had judged perhaps excessively extravagant now seemed exactly what the occasion called for. "Remember," Caroline whispered, as she left her at the entrance. "You're not doing this for him, you're doing this for yourself." And now there she was, descending the main staircase to the ballroom, each step measured and deliberate, feeling the gazes turn in her direction. Elizabeth wasn't naive. She knew she wasn't the most beautiful woman in the room. But at that moment, she carried something more powerful than conventional beauty: purpose. As she descended, her eyes met Blake's, who looked as if he was seeing a ghost. Beside him, Vanessa, in her red dress, unconsciously tightened her grip on his arm, a territorial gesture that didn't go unnoticed. "Ladies and gentlemen," Thomas Reynolds' deep voice sounded through the hall, interrupting the growing murmur. "What an unexpected pleasure. From what I understand, we have a special guest tonight." The CEO, a man in his 60s with graying hair and an imposing presence, walked to the foot of the stairs and extended his hand to Elizabeth. "The famous Mrs. Watson, I presume. Your reputation precedes you." Elizabeth felt the blush rise up her neck as she accepted the offered hand. "I'm afraid there's some mistake, Mr. Reynolds. I'm not famous at all." "I strongly disagree," the CEO replied with a warm smile. "When the National Education Association awards its Educator of the Year prize, I pay attention, especially when the recipient is the wife of one of my most promising executives." Blake felt the blood drain from his face. Educator of the Year. Elizabeth had never mentioned such an award, or had she, and he hadn't been paying attention. "You're very kind, Mr. Reynolds, but I fear you're confusing me with someone more noteworthy," Elizabeth responded with genuine modesty that instantly captivated everyone around. "Impossible," insisted Reynolds. "Your speech on integrating classic literature into the modern curriculum has been reproduced in every education college across the country. My granddaughter, who studies pedagogy at Columbia, never stops quoting you." He turned to Blake, who seemed to be having difficulty breathing. "Watson, you should have told us you married an educational celebrity. We're planning to expand our foundation for educational support, and your wife would be an invaluable advisor." It was at this moment that James Harrison, Blake's rival for the promotion, approached with his wife. "Dr. Watson, what an honor to finally meet you in person. My daughter attends the school where you gave that lecture last semester. She came home saying she wanted to be a literature teacher." Elizabeth smiled, genuinely recognizing the executive. "Mr. Harrison, your daughter Megan is exceptionally talented. She has a critical eye that many college students would envy." The conversation flowed naturally as Elizabeth was introduced to one executive after another, many of whom already knew her work or had children who had been impacted by her innovative educational methods. Blake observed from a distance, unable to approach, feeling Vanessa slowly drift away from him. The secretary was many things, but she wasn't stupid. She could read the body language of the people around and knew how to recognize when a battle was lost before it even began. During dinner, Blake finally managed to approach Elizabeth, who had been positioned at the main table with Thomas Reynolds, an honor normally reserved for the most senior executives. "Can we talk in private?" he whispered tensely as the waiters served the appetizer. Elizabeth maintained her social smile, responding without looking directly at him. "I think we've talked enough in private, Blake. Tonight I prefer to talk in public. Why did you never tell me about the award?" The question came out more accusatory than he intended. Finally, Elizabeth turned to face him, her green eyes hard. "It's emeralds. I did 3 times. The last time you were so busy exchanging messages with someone that you just muttered, 'That's nice, dear,' without looking up from your phone." The realization hit Blake like a physical blow. He really didn't know who his wife was. For years, he had presumed her career was smaller, less significant than his own. He had seen her discomfort at social events as a weakness, not realizing she simply reserved her confidence and eloquence for arenas that truly mattered to her. Dinner proceeded as a surreal experience for Blake. He watched Elizabeth discuss educational policies with multinational CEOs, debate Russian literature with the senator's wife in attendance, and make Thomas Reynolds laugh genuinely, something few in the company had ever witnessed. It wasn't just a matter of her behaving adequately. Elizabeth was in her element, shining like never before. When the music started and couples headed to the dance floor, Blake found himself alone in a corner, Vanessa having discreetly disappeared after perceiving the dramatic change in the social wind. It was Jennifer Reynolds, the CEO's wife, who found him there, offering him a glass of champagne. "Your wife is extraordinary, Mr. Watson," she commented with the frankness characteristic of women who don't need social approval. "Thomas is absolutely enchanted. He's been looking for someone with her perspective to lead the restructuring of our educational foundation." Blake swallowed hard. She is truly special. Jennifer observed him for a moment, her perceptive eyes. "You know what's curious? I always imagined you were different. Thomas always praised your intelligence, your strategic vision. But it takes a different kind of intelligence to recognize a diamond when you already have it in your hands." She took a sip of champagne before continuing. "My husband and I have been married for 42 years. Do you know why? Because he never, not for a second, saw me as an accessory to his career. He saw me as his partner in everything." Before Blake could respond, Thomas Reynolds' voice sounded over the sound system. The traditional moment for announcements had arrived. Everyone knew the promotion to vice president would be announced tonight. "Ladies and gentlemen, friends and colleagues," Reynolds began. "As always, this event is not just a celebration, but a moment to announce new directions for our company." He paused dramatically. "This year, in addition to announcing our new Vice President of Operations, I am pleased to announce a significant expansion of our Reynolds Foundation for Educational Excellence." Blake barely listened, his heart pounding as he waited for the promotion announcement. James Harrison will assume the position of Vice President of Operations, bringing his unparalleled experience in supply chain optimization to our executive team. The room erupted in applause as Blake felt his world completely crumble. All his planning, the moral sacrifices, the treatment of Elizabeth, all for nothing. But Reynolds wasn't finished. "I'm also proud to announce that our foundation will have a new executive director, someone whose innovative vision in education will transform our philanthropic approach. Dr. Elizabeth Watson has accepted our invitation to lead this initiative with an annual budget of $20 million. The hall exploded in even more enthusiastic applause. Blake saw Elizabeth, looking genuinely surprised, being embraced by Jennifer Reynolds. His world wasn't just crumbling, it was being completely reconfigured before his eyes. Hours later, when the event was coming to an end, Blake found Elizabeth on the hotel veranda, contemplating the city lights. For a moment, they stood side by side in silence. "I didn't know about the position," Elizabeth finally said. "Thomas offered it to me during dinner. I thought it was just social conversation." Blake swallowed the lump in his throat. "Are you going?" "To accept? I don't know. It's an incredible opportunity to effect real change in the educational system." She turned to face him. "But there are other considerations." "Elizabeth, why?" The words failed. How to apologize for years of devaluation, for a betrayal that went beyond the affair with Vanessa. The fundamental betrayal of not really seeing the woman he had married. Not tonight. Blake. Elizabeth softly interrupted. "Tonight was about me remembering who I am. Tomorrow we can discuss who we are together, or if there still is an us." She walked away, returning to the party to say goodbye to the guests, leaving Blake alone with thoughts he had never been forced to confront. The shimmer of the navy blue dress disappeared into the crowd like a star being reabsorbed into the vastness of the night sky. But unlike distant and unreachable stars, Elizabeth was within reach if he was wise enough to recognize the value of what he had almost thrown away, brave enough to make the necessary changes, and humble enough to deserve a second chance. The apartment was quiet when Blake arrived well after midnight. There was no sign of Elizabeth, just a note on the entry table. "I'm at Caroline's. We need to talk tomorrow. Not like we have for years. Really talk." He sank into the sofa, the bow, tie loose around his neck, confronting the emptiness he had created in his life. The next morning, Blake woke up early, determined to at least try to fix what he had broken. He sent a message to Elizabeth asking to meet her for breakfast. In public, she replied, "The cafe near the park, 9 a.m. The small cafe was almost empty when Blake arrived 15 minutes early. Elizabeth was already there, no longer wearing the dazzling dress from the night before, but in her usual style, well-cut jeans, simple blouse, hair tied in a practical ponytail. Still, Blake saw her with new eyes. How could he have been so blind? "For so long? Thank you for coming," he began, sitting across from her. "I always come when I say I will, Blake." The simple response carried the weight of years of broken promises, his, not hers. He nodded, accepting the implicit criticism. "You were amazing last night, not just beautiful, but brilliant. I've always been the same person." Elizabeth took a sip of her tea. "The difference is that yesterday you had to see me through other people's eyes. The truth hurt precisely because it was undeniable." "I betrayed you," admitted Blake. "Not just with Vanessa, but every day, not recognizing who you are." Elizabeth remained silent, waiting. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," he continued. "I don't deserve it. I'm asking for time to show that I can change, that I want to change. Why?" The question hung between them. "Because you discovered I'm more socially valuable than you thought. Because now I can be an asset to your career." Blake felt the blow, aware he deserved every word. "I deserve that. But no, Elizabeth, because last night showed me how empty I've become. While you were growing, I was diminishing, becoming a lesser version of myself, obsessed with appearances and status. You were always real. I turned into a shell. Something." In his tone, the raw honesty perhaps, made Elizabeth really look at him for the first time that morning. "I don't know if we can go back, Blake." "I don't want to go back," he replied. "I want to go forward, build something new, something true." Elizabeth placed her cup on the table, studying him. "Thomas formally offered me the position this morning. Full salary, benefits, significant budget to implement educational programs across the country." You should accept," said Blake without hesitation. "It's your dream job. And what about you? Your career at Reynolds?" Blake shrugged. "I can find another job or not. Maybe it's time to reassess what really matters." A small smile appeared at the corner of Elizabeth's lips. "That's not what I expected you to say." To be honest, it's not what I expected to say, but it's the truth." He hesitated before continuing. "You know, all the time we've been married, you supported me, celebrated my victories, consoled my defeats. Never, not once, did I do the same for you. That changes today if you give me the chance." Elizabeth didn't answer immediately. Instead, she opened her purse and took out an envelope, sliding it across the table. "Open it." Blake obeyed, finding partially completed divorce papers. His heart sank, but he nodded, accepting. "I understand. I filled them out last night after the ball. I was ready to hand them to you today. And now?" Blake could barely breathe as he waited for the answer. Elizabeth reached out, taking the papers back. "Now? I think I'll keep them for now." She studied him intensely. "I'm not promising anything, Blake. You broke something precious between us, and I'm not sure if it can be repaired, but I'm willing to watch you try. It wasn't forgiveness, it wasn't reconciliation, it was just a small opening, the slightest of chances. But for Blake, it was more than he deserved, and all he could hope for." "It's all I ask," he replied, feeling unexpected tears in his eyes. "One thing I need to know," said Elizabeth, her voice softening. "A bit. Why marry me if you never really saw me?" The question caught him off guard, but the answer came easily. "I did see you. In the beginning, I really did. It was the best part of me that fell in love with the real you. Later, I let ambition, pride, and insecurity cloud that vision." He took a deep breath, but it never completely disappeared. "Last night, when you came down those stairs for a moment before the panic and shame, I felt pride, genuine pride, because somewhere inside me, I always knew who you really are." Elizabeth blinked rapidly, pushing away her own tears. "I'm going to accept the job," she finally said, "and you should keep yours, at least for now. Even after what happened, with the promotion, especially after that, you have lessons to learn about humility and value that go beyond titles and status." She stood up, gathering her things. "I have a meeting with the foundation team in an hour." Blake also stood up. "Can I call you later?" "Yes," she replied, and for the first time that morning, her smile reached her eyes. "And Blake, bring yourself to that conversation. The real you, that's who I married, and that's the only one I'm interested in rebuilding with." As he watched Elizabeth leave the cafe, Blake felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time. Not the artificial confidence he had cultivated as armor, but genuine hope born from the most painful of truths. The path ahead would be difficult, perhaps the greatest challenge he had ever faced, but for the first time in years, it was a path worth traveling. Weeks later, the story of Blake and Elizabeth Watson circulated discreetly through the corridors of Reynolds Enterprises, not as a sordid scandal about an executive and his secretary, but as a story of redemption. Blake surprised everyone, including himself, by voluntarily giving up certain projects to support initiatives of the foundation led by his wife. Elizabeth in turn revolutionized the company's philanthropic approach with innovative educational programs that quickly gained national recognition. At one of the first fundraising galas organized under Elizabeth's leadership, Thomas Reynolds raised his glass in a toast to the Reynolds Foundation and its visionary director. As applause echoed through the hall, his eyes found Blake, who was applauding with genuine pride beside his wife. The CEO nodded subtly, a gesture that communicated more than words. Later that night, as they danced slowly under the soft lights, Elizabeth whispered, "You know we still have a long way to go, right?" Blake nodded, pulling her closer. "I know, and I'm grateful for every step." "Why?" she asked, echoing the question from the breakfast weeks earlier. "Because I've learned that true strength isn't in controlling impressions or manipulating perceptions," he replied. "It's in being authentic, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts." Elizabeth rested her head on his shoulder, allowing herself for the first time in months to relax completely. in his arms. It wasn't a happy ending. It was something more valuable, a new beginning built on difficult truths and conscious choices. A reminder that sometimes you need to almost lose something precious to finally see its true value. To everyone in the hall, they appeared to be just another elegant couple dancing under the shimmering chandeliers. But for Blake and Elizabeth, each step was part of a more complex dance. The delicate balance of forgiving without forgetting, of rebuilding without ignoring what had been broken, and of loving not the idealized image of the other, but the real, imperfect and extraordinary person. And in that moment, at least, it was enough. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but tonight, under the same lights that had witnessed their near destruction, they rehearsed step by step the art of beginning again. This story reminds us that we often seek validation and value in the wrong places, ignoring the treasures we already possess. It shows us that redemption is possible even after profound mistakes, but requires more than words. It demands consistent actions and true change. And perhaps most importantly, it teaches us that true partnership isn't about using the other to achieve our goals, but about growing together, each supporting the best in the other. If this story touched something within you, if it brought reflections about relationships in your own life or about how we value the people around us, share your thoughts and experiences. Sometimes in the stories of others, we find echoes of our own journeys and perhaps glimpses of the path ahead. Thank you for accompanying this journey of discovery, forgiveness, and new beginnings. A reminder that it's never too late to truly see someone for the first time, even after years together.